everyone's okay with that? Anybody have any objections to being recorded?
No.
None at all.
No.
Okay, great. So, with that said, Baba, we'll get started.
All right, started recording.
Okay. All right, so we'd like to first of all greet everyone. Thank everybody for coming out. I know Sunday's usually a lounging day, and everybody has busy weekends and all, but we really appreciate everyone taking a little time out to have a discussion with us and add your various perspectives on the topic that we're covering. The title of this discussion is "What's the Plan?" And it was initiated by, I guess everyone's heard the recent controversy with Ice Cube, the rapper, producer, kind of turned activist. And I won't say activist at this point. Ice Cube has always had, a stream of activism running through him since he's been around, since about the age of 16 with NWA, when they were, aside from the name, where some of their things were more political statements. So Ice Cube has always kind of been running through that type of vein, trying to put Black folks in a more positive light, even with some of his films. I know some of them are a little more comedic, like your Fridays and all, but the barbershops and things like that. He's always tried to cover some titles. So recently, if anybody is unaware, there's been a controversy about him talking to the Trump campaign. He says that you can look at some of the YouTube videos and all of the discussions. Everybody kind of has something to say about this. He's got a lot of flack from talking to the Trump campaign. I think someone from the Trump campaign approached him about helping them to formulate a plan for the Black community. Whether that's genuine or not, is yet to be seen and yet to really be said, but they wanted him to help them to kind of construct a plan for the Black community. He had already had his own plan, which is called the Contract with Black America. And so him and the Trump campaign the Trump camp sat down and they kind of discussed some of the similarities and some of the maybe deficits and gaps that may be in either plan. Trump's plan, and I'm not going to really go into that much. It was a lot of fluff, seemed to be a lot of fluff, a lot of lofty goals, things like eliminating health disparities in the Black community, not really going into, as far as I've read, any details, what that really means. What does that mean to eliminate health disparities in the Black community? Was it a fully laid out plan? It doesn't seem to be. And I'll leave it to everyone to kind of read through that and do some research themselves. But these plans, we want to talk about, kind of go through some of Ice Cube's plan, and really focus in on what is the plan. We've been talking about for years, what is the national plan for Black America? What are our ask, so to speak? We've been griping for quite some time, right? Actually since we've been here, but what is an actual plan that with smart goals that can be implemented going forward, throughout this new decade, in a new world that we're in, when, the world has really been reset, with COVID-19 and you have some racial unrest that is really, in the wake of the George Floyd situation, we kind of saw the support for, our mistreatment was resonating around the world. People in Italy and France and everywhere else were protesting in the streets, in regards to this situation. So, we want to talk about, this plan. There have been other plans around. I don't know if everyone's been familiar. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the Black Panther plan, which was released in 1967. There was a Kerner report that was released about the state of Black America in 1968. And there was a report that was released in 2018, and I'm not sure who put that report out, about 50 years after the Kerner report. And that study talked about 50 years later, after 1968, that the Black community really isn't any much further. I mean, we talking about we've moved maybe an inch any further in 50 years from 1968 to 2018. So, this discussion is really about, we could talk about some of these Ice Cube points, but I want to kind of get a perspective from everyone about what do you think is the plan for Black America, right? And we're talking about nationally, but I believe we're all native Philadelphians, or at least operating here in Philadelphia. I want to even bring it locally, because Philadelphia right now is a microcosm for social ills that are going on in urban America, right? We're really having a rough time this year. The murder rate is through the roof, crime and poverty, and we're the poorest big city in the entire United States. So there's a lot of issues here. And we just want to discuss what the plan is. And what you guys think and what that particular perspective is. So with that said, we want to just do some quick introductions and we'll just jump right into it. I want you guys just kind of wanted to lay that framework out there so you can kind of wrap your head around what we're going to be discussing, for the next hour or so. So how about we start with Baba Yumi, because he is the founder of the Institute. And just kind of, introduce yourself, Baba Yumi, if you could, and just tell us a brief history about the Institute.
Yep, this is Brother Yumi Odom from Brooklyn, New York, the center of the universe. But I moved to Philadelphia in 1988 to attend graduate school at Temple University, and I've been here ever since. The Institute was founded in Brooklyn, though, in 1986, really with the idea to get a few people together to make some changes in the world. And we really have done that. So one of our mottos is that it only takes about 5 people to make a difference in the world. So we have a host of people doing things in Philadelphia, in Washington, in Brooklyn, and in Ghana and elsewhere who are from the Institute. So I welcome all of you. I'm the observer for today, actually. I'm in the background. I'll appear once in a while, maybe to make a comment, but we're really relying on you all and your experience and expertise to share with us for this YouTube experience.
Okay, great. How about I'll get myself out of the way and then we'll kind of go around. Just very quickly, I am Brother Clyde. I am the vice chair on the board of the Frator Heru Institute. Have been involved with the Institute probably around maybe 15 years now, at least. Time is really gone. Love the Institute with all my heart. I mean, it's just such a special place for so many people. Definitely a family. I'm also the co-founder of a mentoring program that operates in the Northwest part of Philadelphia called Making Men. We are new. We have been in existence actually for about 4 years, but we have actually been an official 501c3 for about a year now. And we work specifically with young men. We operate out of Dare to Imagine Church, which is also in the Northwest, in the Mount Airy section of the city. Founded by Pastor KJ, Kevin Johnson. And, that's kind of where I am. Do a lot of community work all over the place. Ex-educator, program coordinator for the anti-violence program and all of those things. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Ms. Richardson, we'll just go around.
Okay, hi, Linda Richardson, and for the past 30 years, I've worked on organizational development. I've founded 3 organizations, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I currently serve on the organization, the Uptown Entertainment and Development Corporation. We have a theater, a radio station, youth program, and a community planning program. For most of my work has been in developing leadership through nonprofits, regionally, locally, nationally, and international, with an emphasis on organizational development internationally in Africa.
Okay, great. How about we'll just come down to that next slide. I'm looking at a gallery view. Baba Akil.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Akil Chinesu. I'm currently serving as board chair of the Frator Heru Institute. I am certified as a facilitator in human race studies and rites of passage. I'm retired after 30 years of work from working with the state, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Department of Public Assistance. I retired as a supervisor.
All right. Brother Pasco.
Hello.
Yes, we're here.
Everyone. My name is Andre Pasco. I'm a member of Making Men, a founding member with Brother Clyde. I currently work for the city of Philadelphia as a probation officer. Been working with the courts for a little bit over 10 years now. Prior to that, I did nonprofit work in the city of Philadelphia in the high school system. And really interested in uplifting community uplift, as well as just entrepreneurship on the whole, as well as this financial literacy. So those are my primary points of interest. Definitely entrepreneurship, primarily through the financial literacy piece.
Okay. Miss is, and I don't want to butcher your last name. Miss Gail, is that Loney?
Yes,
Okay, I got it.
you got
Okay.
it. Hi, my name is Gail Loney. I am a steering committee member for the Stadium Stompers, as well as Philadelphia Neighborhood Networks. I have been involved in economic dignity work around housing, wages, and policing and police brutality. I'm a retired compliance analyst, senior compliance analyst, working in the investment industry for the last, I guess, 30 years. So as a currently retired person, I got involved in a lot of giving back community activities. I'm a block captain on my block. And that's kind of where my start in community activism began. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Mr. Brown.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Brown, father of 3, aspiring entrepreneur, lifelong learner, and that's pretty much all me. As a father, I've started to learn the importance of giving back and developing the next generation to not fall in the same mistakes that I've fallen into and peers of mine, which is why I'm on this call, to just kind of move forward to see what, I guess, a cohesive plan might be for us. So.
Great. And Miss Wiggins.
Hi, everybody. Jackie Wiggins, long-term Central Philadelphia resident. I'm in the house I pretty much grew up in since 1960-61. I'm a retired teacher, public school, charter schools, community college of Philadelphia. And I am a committee person for 36th Ward, 11th Division. And I have my own little business called Wiggins Tours and More, where I do tours of the Underground Railroad or whatever piece of history that people don't know about Black folks. That's what I try to do.
Okay, great. So we it seems we have a great array of the meeting of the minds here, right? And like I said, I'd like to really welcome everyone and thank everyone for joining us. Like I said, some of the documents that I mentioned, you can kind of research yourself. There are a lot of similarities among them, but there are some differences as well. And I want to just kind of go and just very quickly read through the first document, which I think and actually probably one of the more familiar documents with African American history buffs or fans or what have you, which is that Black Panther 10-point system. And they came out with this. This was released in May of 1967. And I just want to kind of, just read through some of these very quickly and just kind of compare them to, we'll go into this Ice Cube plan. So the first of the 10-point system was, we want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black community. We want full employment for our people. Number 3, we want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of Black and oppressed communities. Number 4, we want decent housing fit for shelter for human beings. Number 5, we want education for our people that exposes the true nature of the decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in present day society. Number 6, we want all Black men to be exempt from military service. Number 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of Black people. Number 8, we want freedom for all Black men held in federal, state, county, city, prisons, and jails. Number 9, we want all Black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in a jury of their peers and from the Black communities, as defined by the Constitution of the United States. And number 10 is, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. So, kind of the underlying, what I see as the underlying theme in this 10-point system, even back in 1967 from the Black Panthers, was really a kind of summary or overall what would be reparations, right? And, we've been having this discussion for quite a while. Reparations for all of the things, not only slavery, but the continued onslaught against African Americans in various forms throughout our history since we've been here. The same goes through, fast forward to, well, let's say that next year, the Kerner report, the Kerner Commission report, which was a commission that released a report on the state of Black America in 1968. And as I said, that other report that was released in 2018, which was 50 years after the Kerner report, which stated that in some of the areas, and some of the areas that they mentioned were unemployment, wages and income, family wealth, health, incarceration, and educational attainment, right? So kind of running some of the same themes as the Black Panther plan. And then fast forward to that, and here in 2020, Ice Cube coming up with this 13-point plan and this contract with Black America that he wanted to present. And as he stated, to either party, whoever, he talked about working with whoever is in power and whoever is in a position to be able to make decisions and make things happen. And we can go through some of those points as we go further along in the discussion, but I wanted to, just have everybody jump in as we listen to these points and we listen to the similarities and the common themes. What are you guys' thoughts on what is the plan? What can we come up with that would be a national plan to move Black America forward in this new day and age that we're facing?
Well, let me start because I'm probably the oldest, having been involved in some of the implementation of the Black Panther Party 10-point plan and attending the 1973 Independent Black Political Convention. So the plan and the Kerner Commission was a commission that came from the government, input from various sectors of the community. So the differences in the commission and the Panthers and Ice Cube is basically two of them come from the African-American community in specific, and the other one response. So the plan, as all of them looked at, is some of the inequities and inequalities. The Panthers had the plan, but they also did the implementation. So they were responsible for doing what we now know is the government-sponsored, free kindergarten program. They also set up medical centers and organized doctors, both Black and white, to provide free medicine because of the inequalities of medical access. And they also did free breakfast programs, which is now implemented in the educational institutions. So we have to look at the plan from both the ideology and the implementation and the policy. And so my own comment, I don't know Ice Cube's plan, but my comment is that unless there is a plebiscite, a mass discussion, a plan can only be effective when masses of people buy into it and are affected and then get recruited and organized to be able to affect change.
Great, great. Thank you for that input. Does anyone want to kind of piggyback off of that or add to?
Basically, when you're talking about a plan, as Ms. Richardson stated, implementation is key. Without it, then it's just words. I think that one of the problem is consistent. There's nothing changed in the last 50 years or 500 years, actually. The thing is putting a plan in motion and having those people who you can trust to be accountable to initiate that plan. As a community, we put a lot of faith, and I believe falsely, in politicians, no matter what their ethnic identity may be. And that's where one of our key failings exists. Thinking that electing a particular individual, we will have the needs that we so desperately need addressed. I think that most critical movements, as exhibited by the Black Panther Party, start at what we call the grassroots level. But I think that we all have a wide variety of experience, but we have a common thread among all of us in addressing our particular needs. The question is, and maybe part of the solution, is that a lot of times we are more focused on what separates us as opposed to what binds us. What that common thread exists. A lot of times we're more focused on, how we're different. But I think that we focus on more that singular thread or singular threads that bind us and work around those particular threads, then we'll start developing the success that we're looking for. All of us represent different organizations. So for example, we could find just basic ways where we could support our individual organizations and, and our mutual organizations, then we can start generating that cooperative mindset to develop those programs that we need, you know, through group community actions.
Well said. How about anyone else?
So, so I'm a grassroots person, okay? And I guess what I realize is with a plan, you have to get the buy-in of the people, because otherwise you're making a plan for me or for the people, but you need their input and you need their buy-in. Okay. I realize that Ice Cube may have come from a community such as the one that I live in. And so he has insight with regards to some of that. But at the same time, he took his plan and I don't know where he took his plan to, but at the grassroots where I am and in the community where I am, I don't know what his plan is. So I feel like a lot of times, you know, celebrities are the ones who get the media attention and get the buy-in from the politicians, but they haven't come to the communities that they came from. They didn't talk to the grassroots organizations that exist on the ground level, you know, which is where the people are on the ground. And, you know, whether it's a good plan or not, there has to be a dissemination of the information. And you need to start it at that ground. So I'm a person that believes as a block captain, I'm on the ground. You know, I'm talking to the people, but I also live with them. I live in the neighborhood. I live in that area and I'm working with the people who are being affected. And so I'm firsthand. But so many times at this level, people aren't talking to you. I don't have any money. You know what I mean? I don't have the celebrity and the access to the politicians, you know, and so it becomes a trickle down effect. But I feel like a lot of times that trickle down effect, the important stuff doesn't get to the bottom. I feel like it needs to swell from the bottom and go up and make a loud noise that way, like an explosion. And so, you know, like I said, his plan may be good. His points may be the same points that I have in my plan. Okay. And it may be, but how it's going to be implemented is going to be an issue. And I'm gonna go here. You talking money to money. Ice Cube got money. He talking to Trump. Okay. And whether Trump is broke or not, it's assumed that he has money as well. Okay. But the bottom line is the people who need the help and the people who need to be involved in this conversation are the people without the money. You know, is he going to come to the hood? Is he going to disseminate his ambassadors to bring his plan to a level where basic people like you and I right now are talking about it? Is there 20 million conversations going on across this country where Black people are having, you know, these same conversations and making an action plan, you know, to move forward?
So if I could jump in, I want to kind of go around everybody, but I just want to kind of, you know, piggyback off of some of the things that I hear you saying. And one thing that could be a plan is just kind of coming to mind, you know, as I'm listening to you talk, is that, you know, not only Ice Cube, we see, and people have their different opinions about this, but we see your T.I.s and your David Banners and, you know, your Killer Mike in Atlanta and, you know, various other entertainers that are kind of almost taking this turn and coming to the forefront to get a little more community and politically active. So, what I'm hearing is that maybe one part of a plan could be that if they want to actually, really be sincere about getting some real work done, that maybe they can start, and you talked about the money, Ms. Loney, come up with a pool that they can actually start to fund some of these nonprofits, fund some of these projects, some of these initiatives as celebrities. Since we
Yes.
can't go to the banks, we can't really get to the government funding. They still, the funding comes down to your larger nonprofits, which, as you said, it never really trickles down to the people that are actually in the community and doing the work. That maybe they can create a fund that will, because we're talking about like millions and millions of dollars that are going around, create a national fund, as well as being ambassadors, to fund some of the initiatives that will really bring about change in our communities. I see that's something as being very viable and very doable. These are all, we know we have some 501c3s here that, this money is all returnable back on your taxes. It's not even like you're giving it away. You're going to get it right back. So, a lot of times when we talk about it, you could spend, $250,000 on a watch. That's
Exactly.
$250,000 you spending on a watch. You got, I got $2 million on my neck. What about some of the, like you said, going back to your neighbor, even your neighborhood? Doesn't even have to be across the nation. Where you came from.
Exactly.
Start right there. What is going on? And maybe some of the faith-based institutions, or some of the community-based programs that you can fund, that will help get some, if it doesn't help, but 2025 youth. That's 2025 that may be saved, or redirected from what all of the ills that could grab them in the streets. Does anybody else have any comments about? And I, just before we move on,
I want to say, respond, and then I really want to listen to young people, but I want to just say that the infrastructures of the plan is in place. The Black Panther Party, there is a national fund, the Black United Fund, the National Black United Fund. Those institutions came out of two different eras. What was significant about the two is the overwhelming governmental surveillance and infiltration and destruction. So any plan has to include how we are able to educate and insulate us from the destruction of institutions, and also, coming out of enslavement, we had education as the goal. So that's how the HBCUs were set up. They're in very poor shape right now. Trump was able to, raise the level of discussion by providing minimal support. Then we had the Black Power, which is where the Panther Party came out. And then in the 70s, we had the Independent Black Political Convention, which was made up of Republicans, Democrats, Marxists, nationalists, independents that came up with a plan. The plan included organizing people at the grassroots level for political involvement. What it did not do is come up with an effective methodology to make the politicians accountable. So we have now an era of politicians who jump out there to be elected for me, not for us, which is not what the Independent Black Political Convention had. So first of all, we've got to look at what has been done and how we can strengthen the ideas and bring them to the 21st century. And two, make sure that the education and organizing is not going to destroy the institutions that are moving our people forward. I believe that the young people are the key to this plan. Many of these institutions are run by people in their 70s. We're tired. We need to be put in the place of elders and to be able to do what I think is needed is to provide that background in history and guidance. But I think that we need to be able to make our young people empowered and provide them with the necessary historical and experiential aspects of movement building so that they can move us to the next level. And I'm going to really stop because I really think that our discussion ideas are important, but we got in it. And I know that Jackie is the historian. I'm just doing my experiences, but I want to, try to put us in that context.
Great. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's an African proverb, I believe, that talks about young men are for war and older men are for councils. And in this, in the case, young men and women and elders are for counsel, and for guidance. And, we've got to get, I think, young people more involved in their stakes. Like you said, we kind of all kind of done our thing, even though we're still in this fight. And I'm sure everyone on this call will be until the day we transition. It's just, once it gets to your spirit, I think it's always there. But we really need to get, I think, young people more involved and invested in their own futures and the future of their children. They're going to be, I have one child that's in, still in school, school educated child now. The rest of my children are grown now. And a lot of us are the same, in the same predicament. But, their children are going to be going through these, these schools are devastated at this point, and with this disruption, with this virtual learning and this transition, with our children already being behind the 8 ball in a lot of ways. This disruption is really, like, this year is really going to take a lot of them for a loop, possibly unable to catch up ever, So I hear you, Miss Richardson, on that. Did Miss Wiggins, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to say that all the points are great. But I think what Linda said is on point, and what you're saying too. We have to begin right now. Somebody's okay. So I think we have to begin to really identify the young people we're talking about. Okay, it can't be vague. We're going to have to really begin in our own way to identify, and I'm trying to do that now. I think when we had Gail and I are stompers, and there's some really dynamic young people involved with that. But we have to begin to identify these young folks right now and begin whatever the program is going to be so that they can learn the history. Linda, you bring a wealth of information in terms of your experiences. Which I'm not really a historian, I'm an educator, but the reality is that we have to know our story. Okay, we have to know our story, and that has to be a phase of everything that we do. So if we can begin to identify some young people right now, we just need to start whatever the school's going to be, the school of the Black United Front. I don't know what we're going to call it, but we have to really, and Linda's doing that. You're doing that already. Some of the others are doing that too. But we have to sort of come together so they can meet one another and sort of know one another. If we start with 5, we can make it 10, 15, 20. One other point with respect to, it does take money to run certain programs. And I think, Linda, you made the point that we did not have in place the accountability of the elected officials. And I think that's something that if we still have the energy, that we can do. We can do that right now and jumping in their face, stand in their face, I think everyone on this call probably has some experience with that, but we're going to have to do that. Okay, we're just going to have to stay with it because the reparations piece is something that is getting short shrift. All right, that is a concern to me. You know, we are due, we're overdue, and that's just my take, and I'm going to be quiet.
If I could jump in.
Sure. I was just getting ready to ask you, Brother Dave, you being one of the younger gents on the call right here, you want to get your perspective on this?
Please. To the point of just knowing our story, I think one of the things in discussing any plan is understanding where you're at. And where you're at, I mean, like, we live in the United States of America. That's no secret. It is a capitalist country. That is no secret. It is one of the greatest world powers in the world because of that. And that's not a secret either. I think one thing that in knowing our story, my generation and people younger than me need to become more in connection with, and to me, strive to imitate are some of the business owners that served our community solely during the times of segregation. I don't think that, personally, the idea of Ice Cube meeting with Donald Trump, I'm not at all bothered by the idea itself, because I mean, if you are given a seat with a person in power, this country respects power, you have to take that appointment. What you do with that appointment is a whole different discussion, but the idea of not taking it, the idea of not potentially presenting or advancing your point of view, I think that's deleterious. Like, you have to do that. There's a huge education component that is missing, I feel, amongst my peers as to what to do with potential resources. And then there are just a lot of things, I mean, that I've fallen into myself with regards to personal finance, into how to manage money that can put you in better positions. But I don't think at all we can run away from the idea of what you do with money once you have it. I think waiting on a politician, expecting a politician, you have over 300 years of history showing you that that's not going to work. So I think it's most important to look towards, try to emulate, try to re-imitate the examples of Black entrepreneurship that served our community. It became an insular thing, and we were able to survive and strive from that. The same way other communities do it all the time. That's something that we can do. It's just something that's not always done. And there are plenty of reasons as to why it's not always easiest for us to do so, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible. And I think there needs to be more conversation and more light shown on the ways that it is possible and stressing those.
Yeah, great. I want to ask you, Dave, while you're on it and what you mentioned, and like I said, as I'm listening to everyone, and anyone can jump in here. I think it's well known that the African American community generates annually about $1.3 trillion at this point. 98% of that 1.3 trillion, and I'm talking about trillion with a T, goes outside of our community, 98%. And that is economic suicide, right? I think it's been stated that if we were our own nation, we would be about the 16th richest nation in the world, just African Americans. And that's not even going into the rest of the diaspora that's here, our West Indian brothers and sisters, and some of our Latino brothers and sisters, and all, looking at the whole diaspora. But how do we think that the reasons that our businesses, and a lot of us on here know, because we've been involved in entrepreneurial ventures and what have you, how do we figure out how to get our people to actually redirect some more of that 1.3 trillion back to our communities, and have the realizations that that needs to be done, because our businesses could be thriving with 1 trillion in income, right? And it really comes down to our income, because as we know, not many other people do business with African Americans. I mean, we do business with everyone else, but our patronage just really doesn't come, and unless it's unknown that it's an African American led business, our patronage really doesn't come from other communities. Unfortunately, including the Latino community, which we are very close with. We're usually right next door, intermingled with. We do a lot of business with them. They don't do a lot of business with us, the Asians or what have you. And there's, a lot of reasons possibly for that. But how do we, how do we, I think a lot of the older people could, would support a little more, because we're familiar and we know that this needs to be done. But how do we get millennials to start to really support and learn how to support Black-owned businesses?
I personally, I think, again, it kind of leans to knowing our full story and understanding some of the barriers as to why, like, it might take you an extra step to support a Black-owned business that it won't take you to support a business that's not Black-owned, but you have to understand the importance of taking that extra step. But that only comes with your knowledge of, where we've been, where we're coming from, where we're trying to go. So there's that component of it. I also think that there are things that, obviously, wages being what they are, depending on what it is you do or don't do for a living, there are certain things that everyone has the ability to do to put their families in better financial positions. Like, say, for example, take life insurance. Everyone knows that they're going to die, but not everyone has it. That's something that when you pass, that's money that you can leave for your kids, and so forth and so on, your wife. And that doesn't require anything other than just a commitment to do so. So these are particular things, that just being one example, that at least over time could start a base of money to build bigger, better things for our community. But with regards to the consumer side of it, again, the story as to why we are where we are needs to be better known to, I guess, my age group and below, to why it requires that extra step sometimes to support a Black-owned business and the importance of it. Because again, that money circulating in your community will eventually help you as well. But if that's not known to you, then that's not going to be something that you consider as an option.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about these Black towns and Black Wall Streets and restarting some of those entrepreneurial initiatives, but it's going to take us to actually support, because, like I said, the reality of it is that if we don't support ourselves, no one else comes in to support us. Go ahead, Ms. Loney.
So I'm a believer that you have to start with yourself. You have to start at home. You have to start with your family. I've been in the banking and investment industry. That's been my whole career. And so as a young person, I was taught the importance of money. I was taught the value of money by my parents. And my parents were very old school. They came from nothing, and they were able to accumulate wealth. And I think, fast forward to today, I learned those lessons. My siblings learned those lessons. But what I also noticed was everybody doesn't have that. Everybody doesn't learn that from home. But there are ways to get that information. But you also have to show people the importance of that information, how to utilize that information, and the advantage of that information. And a lot of times, I'm going to go here, we have not been listening. I grew up in an era where, I banked at school. We had the little bank books, and you went to school, and, you had a banking day. And, I also was a kid who had chores to do to get an allowance. But if I wanted to make extra money, I had to do something outside my chore in the house to make that extra money, and I banked that money, you know. We have been so busy wanting our children to have more and not have to do the things that we had to do, or not have the experiences that we had, and want to give them so much more. So I think we lost some of our way in terms of teaching them some values that will afford them, a good future. And some of us didn't learn those lessons either, because we can't pass on wealth to our children. So now we got to start from scratch, and now we have to educate young people to not only the value of money, but the value of their name and their credit. And unfortunately, we have to work within the structure that has been created by the white man. And I'm gonna go here. We, we don't have our own banks. We don't have our own little micro money lending systems. It's called loan sharking, to them. But when they do it, it's a bank. We have to take our mindsets and take some of the things that we know and kind of put a twist on it so that our kids understand and learn. And then when you build them up, they will take that to the next level. I was recently having a conversation, and I'm going off on a little tangent, but I'm gonna bring it back, about going to college. We send our kids to college now. We've totally forgotten that there are so many other ways to build you up, build your family, have a career. So now we have all these college educated young people who can't get jobs in their fields, and they're in debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Whereas now we need carpenters, contractors, welders, plumbers, electricians. My thought is, those trades are great. Put a couple of community college courses up in there, let them do their trade. They can start their own businesses. Then we can support their businesses. I have a contractor who is a young man who does great work, but because he doesn't have all the bells and whistles, he doesn't have the great credit to get the work, to get the contracts, to get the things that he needs in order to become a bigger or better entrepreneur, he's kind of like, struggling a lot. And that's what happens to us, and even when we support the Black businesses, a lot of times we have to spend more to support that Black business, because he can't afford to get that loan from the bank. He does not have that credit. He does not have that good standing where he can get a loan at a decent rate, in order to do that. And that's unfortunate, so money, educating us about money and educating us on our own attitudes around money is a very personal thing, and it's a very difficult thing to do, because people do not want you to know how much money they make. They do not want you to tell them to make a budget and how to spend their money, and so it becomes, a struggle, so I think that has a lot to do with it. You got to start at the basics, at the basics.
Yeah, and just kind of, going into, like I said, I'm listening to what everyone's saying. I know quite a few people that have, we're not talking about young children, we're talking about young adult millennials in their homes, sometimes with their own children, who don't want to pay bills, don't want to pay $100 a month, know nothing about money, want to take their tax returns and go to Miami and Atlanta and all of these other things that they're bombarded with, because our young people are bombarded with consumerism to a level where, it has never been realized before. they want $1,500 sneakers and things like that of that nature. I mean, they want to live in mansions and drive Lamborghinis, and really even if you came across money, you would be blowing it all. But they are just bombarded with that from, not only the media, but social media at this point, and each other. They're artists. They're driving around and this car and Bentleys, and no longer just a little Mercedes is even what you want a $300,000 car now. So yeah, really, I hear what you're saying about just the attitude, and I'm writing down some notes here. Just financial literacy, period. Entrepreneurship training, job training. All of these things exist, and there are programs that are addressing them. But what would be, and if I can get somebody to touch on, maybe you, Brother Pascal, we haven't heard from you. If you're able, going forward, just bringing it locally, because like I said, Philadelphia is a microcosm of some social ills that are going on in cities all across America. Going forward, how do we get people more involved, more invested in an official plan to improve our condition?
It's a great question. Thus far, a lot of great points have been made thus far. Especially second the thoughts of is it Miss Looney? Is it Looney? Miss Looney?
Loney.
Miss Loney.
Mhm.
And Brother Brown, just about taking it back to basics. There's a lot of plans on the table that have been on the table for many years, and they really involve changing policy and convincing other people to allocate resources and change laws and things to that nature. But I really liked how they stressed the fact that we just need to go back to basics and deal with philosophy more so than policy. And just go back to basic principles of how do we actually become successful? What do you need to do? We need to respect ourselves, respect others. We need to stay out of trouble with the law. We need to support our families. We need to have a philosophical outlook that we have no choice but to support Black businesses, because we have to go back to a point where it becomes our duty to do so, not, oh, well, I don't feel like dealing with such and such because they think they better than somebody else because, oh, they started a store or they started a business or they started a sneaker line and I'm hating. I mean, there's a lot of psychological hurdles I feel that we need to address before we can even deal with, rolling out lofty plans, and it really starts with ourselves. I believe a lot of mechanisms are in place to address those things, but it needs to become fashionable. It needs to become the thing. It needs to be a hashtag, that manifests itself in many different ways. And it needs to just really be embedded within our culture that we are going to support ourselves no matter what. And in the age of a Black Lives Matter, I would hope that what comes out of it is just a greater love for your fellow man, because of what we're all going through, the commonality that we share as people of color, however you want to frame it. So I really think that's where it starts. As far as the financial piece and a lot of that stuff, we should really let's do an updated assessment of what it means to be successful. Because most people right now, they go to college because they're told to go to college. You're told that that's what you need to do to be successful. And most people, they just want to go get a job. So the way things are now, with the job market skewed, debt rates the way they are, there's a lot of ways that you can just go out, get a license, get some training, and go into the job force. It may cost you a couple $100s to do so, instead of a half-hearted effort in college. You don't graduate, you're stuck with the debt, and it becomes an anchor for you. And that's not just our community, obviously. That's a generational issue. There's Bill.
I can't hear.
He's
Keep
muted.
format
Okay.
what it is now. Develop a mission, develop a plan that you could start a business, be it online, something in the tech field, consulting, with the trades. So, I mean, there's a lot we can do. I think we just need to kind of just update things strategy wise, but go back to basic principles to get there.
Muted.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Everyone hear me now? A
Yes.
question to kind of go off of that. How do we disseminate that information? I think a lot of people that are in the know, us so-called conscious Black folk, we discuss and we study and we research a lot of these things all the time. But I think the masses of our people, and I know a lot of our people that are, especially going to the youth, and I hate to keep using that term at risk, because it is kind of all of our youth are at risk. But our young people, and not just saying even our teenagers are younger than that, but even our young adults, even our 30-somethings at this point. How do we get that information out, or kind of diffuse that mindset out into the community, so that people, like I said, coming back to it, are more invested? The principles and the basics that you guys are talking about really comes down to the Ngozo Saba. They're basically, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, cooperative economics and self-determination and unity and collective responsibility and all of those things. So they really go back to those particular principles that have been out for quite a while. I think about, what is it, Baba Yumi, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think about 1964 with Brother Malana Karenga putting out this whole Kwanzaa theory and the principles associated with Kwanzaa. So those basics that you guys are kind of discussing really kind of run, that same thread runs through those principles. How do you think we disseminate those principles into the community as a whole?
That's 1966.
66. Okay, I knew I was close. Thank you, Bob.
But one of the things that in terms of dissemination, Gail's points are really, really important. I was a banker in the school savings program, and I was the one that collected money and gave it to the people who were representing the bank. And so I learned how to handle money. So that was like a great skill. When I graduated from high school, I either had to go to school or get a job, and my parents couldn't afford to send me to school, so I got a job. And the first pay that I had, my mom was at the door waiting to get rent. And that was expected. I didn't question it because I was in her house. I was eating the food. I had all the luxuries, and I still had some money to save. So part of the basics has to be education, and the dissemination, but it starts with a model. So I'm not trying to give you guys any work, but what if we could start some classes with FHI doing this basics and trying to get a pool of money so that we could have some other community centers have the basics. And then, we can start with a model, which would be a business. And what is the business that is fairly easy to go into? It's the storefront. Every ethnic group in this country has started out first peddling on the streets and then getting a storefront. And the difference between us and them is that we didn't pool our money together, or we didn't have the wealth to pull our money. So we could help set up a couple of neighborhood stores, grocery stores, and get our youth to staff them and run them. That's a model of economics that's basic, but also shows some kind of we can duplicate that not only in one neighborhood but all over. So the training you all have, FHI has that history, but I believe we could get some other community centers, and I'm not trying to. I'd be willing to work on some aspects of this, but I think it does start with institution that has the ability to be trusted and to share information, and has the historical and integrity that our people will trust.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot to do with it, mistrust. Kind of going back to we talked about a pool of celebrity funding. It's not without warrant. I'm sure that people have been burned by investing in different community initiatives. I know not too long ago, and to bring up Brother Bill Cosby, he invested in I believe that 10,000 men initiative that was here in Philadelphia. And anybody correct me if I'm wrong. But he invested quite a few dollars in it, and nothing kind of materialized for whatever reason. So I think it's a mistrust thing both ways, and we know that goes back to as long as they could keep us mistrusting each other, things will remain the same anyway. But as you kind of alluded to, Ms. Richardson, the trusted organizations that won't misuse the funds, that will get the work done, and finding a committed, maybe celebrity funder, or a pool of celebrity funders that could give a little here and there to help out and bring about some tangible, right? Something that you can see, that is some change in the communities and the neighborhoods. I wanted to, we're getting kind of close to the time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I wanted to just kind of go around and just kind of ask anyone if they wanted to make any kind of closing remarks on the subject. We're just scratching the surface, and this is, I think, a great discussion, and I'd love to continue it and maybe even touch on some more specific aspects of it. This was kind of bringing it up in general, but maybe we can continue and bring up some specific aspects and continue these discussions. So if anybody wants to we go around and make any closing remarks, we'll take those now.
And a really quick one. One thing that I have, I guess, been heartened by and have grown from is understanding that though we as African Americans exist here, like there's a long history of us doing things throughout the entire world that we should honestly be looking to as examples as well. And this is education that I've come across as a 35-year-old adult male. You know, like this isn't something that I learned as a kid, but just things that I've seen examples of us strive again throughout the diaspora. I feel like the more examples that we can pull for young people in all ages of people, honestly, it should and could help in building like an energy and an inspiration to do more and be more, honestly.
Yeah, and I you know, we've had discussions about that, but we really need to we really talk about changing the culture, you know, and because I think especially our young people, and we talked about, someone mentioned models of success and what success really looks like. But I think we, for quite a while now, had, in my opinion, a culture of failure, right? That it's cool to fail. It's cool to not really achieve. It's cool to, even amongst the conscious community, a lot of people think that you have to be in a struggle to be in the struggle, right? That you can't prosper, right? You know, to be in the struggle, you know, and that's not so. So, you know, to get around these mindsets, you know, is really, I think that we really need to just, if once you change a culture, you know, a lot of other ethnic groups, they don't have the culture of failure and struggle that we have, you know, and a lot of that has to do with people coming to this country, some from thousands of miles away. You know, you don't come from 2,000 miles away to come and struggle. I could have stayed home and struggled, right? People come here for some level of success. And I think, you know, us being so complacent, and, you know, we have definitely been second-class citizens in this country, if considered citizens at all. We've gotten complacent to thinking that we're part of this American fabric, and we're just the struggling part of this fabric. And we got to get over that mindset, because it doesn't have to be. You know, we're a powerful influence in this country and in the world. You know, the biggest, largest GDP of American economy is Black culture, right? They make no more money off of anything else, and I'm talking about oil or anything else, than they have made off of selling Black culture around the world. We are influencers around the world, and that's a lot of power that we hold, but it's not a lot of power that we harness. We don't harness that power. We hold it, but we don't harness it. So others harness and profit off of it. I see you there, Miss Wiggins.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that. We don't, because once again, as I think Gail and Linda and everyone else has said, we have to deal with self first, and that has been difficult, because, and we can't let this go either. That's the institutional force of white racism. That's a force, but it's still, we have to deal with one another in terms of how we treat. So our task, I think, too, is to re-educate, reprogram, whatever it's going to take, with what we have, with the resources that we do have. And the best resource we have is our own capital, is who we are. And I think those of us, even though I know I'm getting up there in age and so forth, but I still got some breathing. So I just think we just need to, you know, pull that kind of resource and not be afraid that we don't know everything that the young people, what's on their mind, because folks didn't know it was on our mind either when we were young. So it's just, you know, like an intergenerational, you know, piece here. But we really are going to have to look at self and begin to rethink our thinking. I just want to say this for a minute. Someone just sent out something quoting that unclaimed, as far as I'm concerned, Willie Lynch nonsense. And I had to tell the person, stop doing it. Okay, to hear from some white racist. Okay, we need to look at the inspirational and aspirational aspects of us, and there's a wealth of stories, but we have to keep telling those stories to our elders in memory, and to our babies.
Mm. Agreed.
25-year-olds too.
Yep.
And I think and I think we have to tell our own stories. You know, our children look to all these celebrities and all these, you know, athletes and all of this, you know, as their role models and all of this. But in the struggle, they need to be looking right there at their neighbors, their grandparents, you know, their aunts, their uncles who have made it through the real struggles, you know, and you know, we put these people up on these pedestals and we want to emulate them and have what they have and do what they do, but we got to put the work in. You know, we got to put the work in. And so I want us to go back and realize that the person closest to you, you need to have a one-on-one conversation sometimes to find out what their struggle was and how they got to where they were. You know, they might not have, and I know I don't have no big old mansion nowhere, and I'm not driving, I'm driving a regular old car, living in a regular old house, living in the neighborhood, you know, but I found, you know, I've found success. And so what success looks like, it depends on what you feel and what you have brought to yourself, your family, what you brought to the table, what you've brought back to the community. And we have to learn that that is the importance of who we are. And that builds up our culture. When we learn about ourselves, when we learn about our families, you may be surprised to learn some of the things that you know that is right in your own family.
Oh yeah.
You know, that you should and could and would be proud of, because without them, you would not have, you won't be here. We wouldn't be here to have this conversation. You know what I mean? And so I think we have to, you know, we have to look back to where we came from. I'm an avid believer in that. That is what keeps me going. I know where my family came from. I know what I came from. And I'm proud of that. And I'm gonna tell you, I had to learn to be proud of that, because as a child, sometimes you're a child, and so you think like a child. And you're, you know, you want to be like everybody else, and you looking at everybody. Stop looking all, stop doing that. Look inside yourself, look inside your household, look inside your family. That's the beginning. And look inside your community and your neighborhood.
Definitely. And I just want to, we're up against time, but just kind of piggyback off what you said before we close. There was an article, I believe in an Enquirer, and I believe the title was "The Stories That Bind Us." Anybody can Google it and look at it. And it talked about, I think it was a therapist that wrote the article, and it talked about that is one of the number one criteria for young people that are successful, that they know that within their families, they know that these certain stories are what binds them to something bigger and larger than themselves. Not even going out to the community. And Brother Yumi teaches this in our Rites of Passage course about concentric circles, and kind of going back to what you were saying, Ms. Wiggins, starting with self and it kind of radiating out to family and then community and then your city and state and country and continent and you name it, right? That series of circles. But to know the stories that bind you, just you and your family, and not only with the struggles in the past, how you're struggling right now, you know, and how you want better for them could help them to, you know, hopefully some type of motivation and empowerment tools for them. So, you know, we ran a couple of minutes over. I think, you know, we can leave it there for now. I want to once again thank everyone. You know, very, very enlightening discussion. I really loved all the perspectives. I think this is a great collection of, like I said, great and unified minds here. And I think if we continue these, you know, maybe we could come up with some initiatives together that we can actually, because like I said, it's about action at this point. We don't want to be 50 years again from now still talking about these same gripes. Let's get some action going and, continue the conversation. All right. Does anybody else want to call? You want to close out, Baba Yumi?
We just say thank you for this afternoon. Great conversation. I'll see you on the email. So much more to do, but so much has already been done. I just think that many people don't know it. So it's time for that paradigm shift that we're always talking about. Yep, thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Everybody have a great evening and a